I sat at the edge of the long dinner table, nursing my drink, trying to blend into the background. It wasn't hard. Everyone was focused on the guest of honor, Carol, retiring after 25 years. The chatter was polite, surface level, but that didn't stop Lisa from making sure her voice cut through every conversation. She was leaning back in her chair, loud enough for the whole room to hear, as usual. "You know, my ex always knew how to treat me," she said, with a little too much satisfaction, flashing a smile in my direction. It was aimed at me, I knew that. Her voice dripped with the kind of passive-aggressive tone she used when she wanted to take a jab, but keep her hands clean. A dig meant to sting, but not too hard to be called out. I didn't bite, didn't even flinch. Just kept my eyes on my drink, letting the silence between us do the work. She laughed then, a fake, high-pitched laugh, and I could almost feel the weight of the eyes in the room, waiting for me to react. But I didn't. I just sat there, calmly, like it was any other dinner, any other comment. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. I didn't speak. Lisa looked back at her plate, as if nothing had happened, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was watching me, waiting for a reaction, and I could feel the satisfaction in her eyes when it didn't come. The conversation moved on, but the air felt thicker now, charged with something unsaid. The drive home was quiet, but Lisa didn't seem to notice. She hummed softly along with the radio, tapping her fingers against the steering wheel, like everything was fine. Like she hadn't just thrown a verbal grenade in front of everyone at the dinner. She glanced over at me, a quick casual look. "Well, I think that went well," she said, her voice light. Carol seemed really touched by all the attention. I nodded, not trusting myself to say anything. There was no point. She was already walking on air, thinking her little jab had landed perfectly, that she'd scored some kind of win over me. She parked the car in the driveway and killed the engine, then slipped out of the car, practically bouncing toward the front door. I didn't follow right away. I stayed in the driveway for a second, just watching her walk inside, her heels clicking against the concrete, the sound echoing in the cold air. Inside, the house smelled like her perfume, sweet and faintly artificial. I closed the door quietly behind me, taking in the silence of the place. Lisa was already upstairs, probably changing into something more comfortable, like she always did after an event. I didn't need to follow her. I didn't need to say a word. She was too wrapped up in herself, in the idea that everything was still the same, still on track, but it wasn't. Not anymore. As I stood there, I started replaying the evening in my head, not with anger, but with clarity. Every little moment counted now. Her phone buzzing on the table, a couple of times, but she'd quickly dismissed it. Her forced laughter when no one else joined in, trying too hard to be the center of attention. The way her smile faltered just a little after she made her little comment at the dinner. She thought she'd won, but I could see the cracks. Her comment about her ex. That wasn't just a random shot. It wasn't just her usual attempt to stir the pot. It was deliberate. It was meant to hurt me, but I wasn't angry, not yet. Anger was messy. Anger didn't get things done. I walked upstairs, taking my time. Lisa was already in our room, her back to me as she dug through her dresser for something. She didn't even look up as I stepped in, but I saw the tightness in her shoulders. She didn't realize yet what had shifted, but I was already there. I sat down on the edge of the bed and let the quiet of the room settle around us. Lisa still hummed to herself, content in her own little world, thinking I was still the same person. She didn't know I was already planning the next move. "Did you enjoy the night?" she asked, still not facing me. I let her words hang in the air for a moment before answering. "It was fine." She turned toward me, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Good. I thought you'd like it." I didn't say anything else. She didn't need more from me tonight. She had enough of my silence. Lisa headed to the bathroom then, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I stood up and walked to the desk in the corner of the room, opened my laptop, and started pulling up the files I'd been quietly putting together for the past few weeks. Nothing major yet, just the preliminary stuff. A few notes, a folder for the lawyer, a few scanned copies of things I might need. Just the little things, nothing that would raise suspicion. Not yet. When I looked at the screen, I wasn't angry, I was focused. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about getting back at her for whatever power plays she'd been making. This was about taking control, making sure that things went the way they were supposed to from here on out. I let the soft clicking of the keys fill the silence. There was no turning back now. Lisa's humming grew faint as she moved around upstairs, and I took a breath, settling into the quiet of the room. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Then I clicked open the folder labeled Contingencies. It was all there, the planning I'd been doing for months. The emails to the lawyer, the accountant's notes, the trust setup, everything. Nothing flashy, just the cold steps of what needed to be done, when it needed to be done. It was time. I clicked open the first draft of the email I'd been preparing. Brief, direct, nothing to raise suspicion. Subject: proceeding with next steps C. Lawyer's name: please initiate the next phase as we discussed. I'll follow up in the next couple of days with any additional info if needed. Best: protagonist's name. I hit send. The sound of the email zipping off was almost satisfying. Final, official. It was out of my hands now. The lawyer knew exactly what to do. I leaned back in my chair for a moment, letting the weight of it settle in. Nothing about this felt like a win. There was no rush of emotion, no triumphant feeling. Just an acknowledgement that the plan was moving forward, one more piece in the puzzle. The steps I'd outlined were ready to be executed. The phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out without thinking. 3 unread messages from Lisa. She probably wanted to know if I was coming to bed soon. Or maybe she thought I'd finally spoken up after the dinner. I stared at the screen for a second. One message read, "You okay?" Another, "Don't be distant tonight. We're fine, right?" The last one was more direct, "Let's talk later." About what happened at dinner. I didn't bother responding. The fact that she was still focused on the dinner, still thinking it was about something as trivial as a stupid comment, told me exactly where her head was. She had no idea what was coming. I checked the lawyer's email one more time, confirming the steps I'd outlined. Then I turned to the next task, a quick check of the trust documents I'd set up in advance. It was all there, each clause carefully worded, each decision calculated. I wasn't leaving any room for error. Another buzz from my phone, but I didn't look. I had already moved past whatever she was thinking. Lisa could stew. I wasn't giving her any of the attention she wanted tonight. I clicked through the documents again, making sure everything was aligned. No mistakes, no gaps. It had to be seamless. After a few minutes, I reached for the drawer in the desk and pulled out the physical copies of the documents I'd signed earlier that day, finalizing a few more pieces of the puzzle. I laid them out neatly on the desk, aligning everything perfectly. They were ready for the lawyer, ready for the next phase. There was no rush. I wasn't going to make a mistake by moving too quickly. My mind flicked back to the dinner again. Lisa's comment about her ex. That was a deliberate move, but it didn't matter now. The trust was set, the lawyer was in the loop, and soon enough, she'd understand. She'd finally realized that all her games, all her petty little moves hadn't worked. The phone buzzed again. I ignored it. I needed to focus. I clicked open the document folder titled Assets. More paperwork I had finalized earlier. The financials were now completely separate, protected. I'd handled everything well ahead of time. Nothing left to chance. I checked the time. Lisa had probably changed and was already lying in bed, wondering where the hell I was. I didn't care. There was no time for pretending anymore. No time for small talk or distractions. Lisa didn't know it yet, but she was already too far behind. I shut my laptop, not even glancing at my phone, and grabbed the file folder with the documents. I tucked it away in the bottom drawer of the desk. Quietly, methodically. No drama, no mess. Just what needed to be done. I was done with the waiting. I was done with her games. The plan had started, and there was no going back now. I woke to the buzzing of my phone beside me on the nightstand. I rolled over, squinting at the screen. Several missed calls, all from Lisa. Messages, voice messages. I didn't rush to answer. It was still early, and I had no intention of engaging with her just yet. I grabbed my coffee mug off the side table, the hot ceramic warm against my fingers, and took a sip. The silence in the room felt thick. Nothing but the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the soft sound of Lisa's breathing still coming from upstairs. I swiped my phone open. The first message was short, but it didn't sound like her usual tone. "Hey, what's going on? My card's been declined. Are you messing with the accounts again?" I could hear the edge in her voice, but I wasn't moved by it. I took another sip of coffee and opened the second one. "This is ridiculous. I can't get any cash. I tried to buy coffee and it said, 'My card's not working. Call me.'" I could almost hear the panic creeping in, the first signs of her control slipping. I clicked on the third. I don't know what's going on, but this is really starting to piss me off. I've been to 2 different ATMs and nothing's working. I need money, so call me now." Her tone was sharper, more frantic now. I set the phone down, leaning back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't my problem. I took another sip of coffee, savoring the bitterness. Her world was starting to shift, and I wasn't about to comfort her through it. She needed to feel it, the panic, the uncertainty. I let the next voice message play. "You have to be doing something, right? Why would my card be blocked? What the hell is going on? I'm serious. This isn't funny anymore." Her voice was trembling now, just the slightest hint of desperation slipping through. I wasn't surprised. She'd always assumed that everything would stay the same, that she could push and pull as she pleased, that things would bend to her will. But they didn't. I wondered how long it would take her to figure out that everything she relied on, everything she thought she had control of, had already been taken away. Slowly, methodically. But now, the consequences were in her face. Another buzz. A text this time. "I'm trying to reach the bank, but they keep saying there's nothing wrong on their end. Did you do something to the account? This is getting out of hand." I didn't even bother opening it. I could feel the tide turning. Lisa was starting to realize that whatever she thought was safe, whatever she assumed was secure, was crumbling. She hadn't even pieced together the full picture yet. That would come later. For now, I just let the messages sit there. Let her spin herself into further confusion. Let her feel the shift she couldn't understand yet. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. I glanced at the screen, seeing her name flash across it. I let it ring, watching the seconds tick by. When the voicemail kicked in, I grabbed my mug again and took another slow sip, trying not to smile. "Okay, seriously. If you're trying to play some game, I'm not fucking around. I need to know what's happening with my money, and I need to know now. Call me." She was almost there, on the edge of the breakdown, just starting to feel the reality of her position, but still not understanding what had happened, still not realizing I had already made my move. I set the phone face down on the bed and let the silence return, filling the space between us. Lisa was losing her grip. I could feel it, and the best part, she didn't even know yet how far gone everything was. I spent the next few hours watching Lisa's panic escalate. The calls and texts kept coming, all variations on the same theme: confusion, frustration, anger. But each one felt emptier than the last, as if she were starting to realize that something much bigger was happening, but couldn't put her finger on what. I barely noticed the time pass until the email from the lawyer landed in my inbox. The subject line was simple, direct. Joint assets, first official action. I opened it, scrolling through the legal jargon quickly. It was everything I'd expected, a set of documents outlining the division of assets, a reminder of the terms I'd set in place months ago, the first real sign that everything was in motion. My phone buzzed again. Another missed call from Lisa. Her voice messages were now strained, almost pleading, but I ignored them. The game was no longer about her. It had moved past that. I pushed the phone aside and focused on the documents. The lawyer had done his part. I'd followed every step, made sure everything was ironclad. Lisa didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just some momentary glitch in her life. It was the beginning of the fallout. As I closed the laptop, there was a knock at the door. I didn't have to guess who it was. I could tell by the hesitation in the knock. It wasn't Lisa. She would have barged in, furious, demanding answers. This was someone else, someone still tethered to the old version of things. I opened the door to find Claire standing there, her eyes wide with a mixture of concern and confusion. Her hands were clasped together in front of her, as if she was holding herself together, trying to act like she wasn't walking into something she didn't understand. "Hey," she said, her voice tight. "I need to talk to you, about Lisa." I didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let her in, not bothering to offer a greeting. She hesitated again, glancing around the room as if searching for something. Answers, maybe. She walked in, and I followed her into the living room. There was no reason to engage right away. I knew what she was here for. Lisa had probably already told her something vague and half-truthful. Claire's confusion was obvious, but she wasn't quite ready to put the pieces together. "I don't know what you're doing, but Lisa's losing it. She's trying to get a hold of you, and it's like you've disappeared." She stopped, glancing over at the desk. Her eyes landed on the letter from the lawyer, partially tucked under the edge of the desk. She froze. The mood shifted almost immediately, the tension palpable. I I don't understand, she said, walking toward it. What's this? Her voice was softer now, like she was starting to feel the weight of it, but still hesitant to ask. I didn't respond, just watched her eyes scan the document, watched her face slowly shift from anger to realization. She'd connected the dots before Lisa had, and she wasn't sure whether she should press further or back off. Finally, Claire took a step back. What the hell are you doing? This is serious. What did you do? I didn't say anything. No point in explaining. She wasn't in the loop, and if she was smart, she wouldn't want to be. You have no idea what you've done, do you? She asked, almost too quietly. She wasn't angry, not exactly. She was scared for Lisa, scared for what might happen next. But she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at the letter. I didn't... She stopped herself, shaking her head like she was reconsidering what she wanted to say. Instead, she just turned toward the door. I don't know what the hell's going on here, but I'm not getting dragged into it. She paused at the door, looking over her shoulder. You're making a mistake, she said, her voice quieter now, like she was trying to convince herself more than anything. I didn't move, didn't speak. I wasn't going to chase her for answers. Claire left, the door closing softly behind her. I stood there for a moment, letting the quiet settle. She'd seen enough to know something had changed, but, like Lisa, she didn't know the full extent of it yet. They both would. In time. I walked back to the desk, eyes lingering on the documents. The first official step had been taken, and Lisa's world had begun to unravel. She was still too caught up in the mess she'd made of everything to see it clearly. But I was patient. I knew exactly what I was doing, and it was only a matter of time before the full weight of it hit her. I didn't expect her to show up at the office. Not yet anyway. But by mid-afternoon, there she was, standing in the doorway of my office, her eyes wide and her posture stiff with a kind of nervous energy I hadn't seen in a long time. The whole air around her was charged, like she was desperately trying to hold on to some semblance of control. I need to talk to you, she said, her voice low but tight with frustration. She didn't wait for permission, just stepped inside, her heels clicking on the floor. I didn't bother to stand up, just kept my eyes on the paperwork in front of me, making a show of finishing the last of the routine tasks I'd set up earlier. She moved closer, clearly agitated, and placed her hands on the desk. What the hell is going on? She demanded. Why is my card still not working? Why are you doing this? I said nothing, just reached over to the other side of the desk, pulling a folder from a drawer. It wasn't thick, but it was heavy with everything she'd never expect to see. Without a word, I slid the folder across the desk toward her. She eyed it for a second, confused, but then she opened it, flipping through the first page without hesitation. The silence stretched out, broken only by the rustle of paper as she skimmed the documents. At first, she didn't understand what she was looking at. Credit card statements, dates, transactions. Then her eyes landed on the next sheet. Screenshots from the night out at Carol's retirement dinner. Her face froze. The laughter, the too friendly gestures with her ex, the messages she thought no one would ever see. She flipped through them faster now, breath catching in her throat as the photos from that night started to register. I watched her face change, the realization hitting her one piece at a time. The way her hands trembled slightly, how her breath got shallower as she flipped through more pages. Emails between her and various contacts, the purchases she'd made in secret, the ones I had meticulously tracked. There was no hiding anymore, no spinning her lies. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, confused, but starting to harden. What is all this? She whispered, voice shaking. Evidence, I said flatly, watching her face turn pale as she absorbed the weight of it. She slammed the folder down on the desk, the sound sharp in the quiet office. You've been tracking me, she asked, her voice rising now, a mix of disbelief and anger. This is insane. What the hell do you want from me? I didn't respond, just leaned back in my chair, watching her, letting the tension settle. She was trying to find a way to control the narrative, but she wasn't going to get it from me. She flipped through the documents again, eyes wild now. This isn't how it happened, she stammered. I didn't mean for things to go like this. You're blowing everything out of proportion. Her defense was weak, the cracks already showing. I waited, letting her go on, knowing she didn't have anything solid to stand on anymore. This is just one mistake, she continued, voice more desperate now, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. You can't just throw everything away over one mistake. More than one mistake, I said, my tone still even, calm. I wasn't in the mood for any of her excuses. I didn't need her to explain herself. I didn't. She stopped, her face twisting as she looked down at the evidence, realizing she couldn't escape it. She couldn't explain her way out of the credit card charges, the photos, the lies. There was no justifying what she had done, and she knew it now. The room felt colder, her shoulders slumped slightly like the fight had drained out of her in real time. I don't even know why you're doing this, she said, her voice quieter now. Why can't we just fix things? I didn't answer, just let the silence stretch again, knowing exactly how she felt right now, cornered, exposed, and helpless. She'd thought she could control everything, but now she was seeing how little power she really had. She stared at the documents in front of her, still hoping there was something she could say, something that would make me go easy on her. But it was too late for that. There was no going back. Don't try to talk your way out of this, I said, finally breaking the silence. You've already shown me exactly who you are. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, not sure what to say, not sure how to salvage any of this. Her eyes flicked between the papers and me, like she was trying to figure out where to go from here, but there was nowhere left to run. She stopped herself again, shaking her head, too stunned to form a coherent thought. Her face flushed with the humiliation of it all. I stood up slowly, and she took a step back, as if my movement startled her. I picked up the folder and slid it back into my desk drawer, not looking at her. I wasn't interested in comforting her. I wasn't interested in explaining anything anymore. She was on her own now. I walked toward the door, stopping just before I left. Think about what you've done, I said over my shoulder, the words hitting her harder than anything else I could have said. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't need to. She was already fully aware of what had happened. The door to the conference room clicked shut behind Lisa with a soft finality. She stood there for a moment, her eyes darting around the room, clearly unsettled. Her attorney was already sitting at the head of the table, flipping through a thick stack of papers, but his usual calm, confident demeanor was gone. There was an air of tension around him, like he already knew things weren't going to go the way she'd hoped. Lisa took a seat across from him, her eyes narrowing as she glanced at the large screen mounted on the wall. The lights dimmed, and without a word, the lawyer hit a button on his remote. The screen blinked to life, and the first image appeared, a hotel check-in receipt. Lisa's face froze as she recognized the date. It was the night of Carol's retirement dinner, the one she'd tried so hard to act casual about, pretending nothing was out of the ordinary. Before she could even process it, the next image flashed on the screen, a series of text messages, her words typed out clearly, revealing her late-night exchanges with her ex. A meeting. A promise. There was no denying it now. The pieces were all coming together in front of her, on that screen, as cold and real as the facts she could no longer escape. She glanced at her lawyer, but he wasn't meeting her eyes. He was too busy clicking through the files, flipping through the evidence like it was just part of the process. His fingers paused on a photo, one of her, laughing with her ex, her hand resting too familiarly on his shoulder. It was taken during the dinner, and Lisa's chest tightened as the full scope of what she'd done began to sink in. Her defiance faltered for the first time. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. The weight of it all started to crush her. She looked back at the screen, eyes darting from one image to the next. Receipts, texts, photos, all laid out in black and white, all proof of the choices she'd made. I don't know how this happened, she stammered, her voice shaking. This isn't everything. You can't just... Her lawyer cut her off with a glance. Lisa, he said, his tone more resigned than angry, you don't have the leverage you think you do. Lisa's eyes flicked to the stack of papers sitting between them, then back to the screen, as if hoping it would somehow change. But it didn't. She could see it in his face. There was nothing left to bargain with. Without a word, her lawyer pushed the stack of papers toward her. The motion was almost mechanical, cold, final. He didn't look at her now, didn't give her the chance to respond. He was done trying to protect her. Sign, he said, his voice flat. Lisa's hands shook as she reached for the pen, but she hesitated. The defiance was still there, buried deep. But it wasn't enough anymore. She'd been backed into a corner, and she knew it. The plan she had so carefully crafted, the power she thought she still had, unraveled with each page she flipped through. The papers were full of legal jargon, but the meaning was clear. She was losing. The assets she thought she could control, the moves she thought she had planned, were slipping away. She picked up the pen, her fingers trembling as she pressed it to the line. The first signature came easily. It was just a formality at this point. The second one felt heavier, a decision she couldn't undo. Her defiance bled out with each stroke, each click of the pen against paper. She didn't look up, didn't glance at her lawyer. She just signed. The silence in the room was thick now, pressing down on her. Lisa put the pen down, her hands still shaking slightly, and pushed the papers back across the table. Her eyes were wide, and there was no fight left in her. The lawyer took them without a word, flipping through them one last time to ensure everything was in order. He didn't offer any reassurance. He didn't need to. Lisa sat back in her chair, the weight of everything settling in. There was no escaping it now. She'd lost. Not just the battle, but the war. I can't believe this is happening, she whispered, as if hoping someone would tell her it wasn't real. But no one did. She looked at the papers one last time, then out the window, as if expecting the world to shift back to what it was before. But it wouldn't. It couldn't. Not anymore. The lawyer gathered the documents, slid them into a folder, and stood up. "It's over," he said simply. And that was it. Lisa sat there, stunned into silence as he left the room. She was alone now, really alone, with only the consequences of her actions to keep her company. I wasn't surprised when she showed up at the courthouse. She'd been avoiding it for days, but something in her snapped after the meeting with her attorney. I could see it in her eyes, even before she stepped up to me. Desperation. It was always the same with her, trying to claw her way back to control, back to power, back to the position where she thought she could bend everything to her will. She caught up to me as I was leaving the building, her heels clicking fast against the pavement, her breath coming quick. Her face was flushed, her hair disheveled like she hadn't had time to fix herself. But her eyes were sharp, trying to find something in me, some weakness to exploit. She didn't have the strength for it anymore. "Wait," she said, voice high, but her usual confidence was long gone. "Please, we need to talk." She grabbed my arm, her fingers cold against my sleeve. I didn't pull away, but I didn't look at her either. I let her hold onto my arm, let her try to anchor herself to something. "Please," she repeated, her voice trembling now. "I know you're pissed, but I can explain. I can fix this. I turned to face her, but I didn't speak. There was nothing to say, nothing that could make this right. The damage had been done, and she was the one who'd inflicted it. She took a breath, her eyes searching mine for any sign that I might give in. "We've been through so much. Don't just walk away from me. Not like this. I still didn't answer. She was stumbling now, struggling to find a way to make me listen, but I had nothing left for her. No more words, no more promises. Without a word, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. I held it out to her, and for a second she hesitated, confusion flashing across her face. Then she took it from me, still not fully understanding what it meant. I didn't wait for her to open it. I turned and started walking away. "Wait," she said again, her voice breaking this time. "What's in it? What are you—" I didn't stop. She had to find out on her own. I wasn't going to explain. I heard the sound of paper tearing, the rustling of the envelope being opened. Her breath hitched. I could almost hear her flipping through the contents, each page a final nail in the coffin she thought she could keep herself out of. The footsteps behind me stopped, and I didn't need to turn around to know that her face had gone pale. The sound of silence from her was more than enough. It was the moment when she realized that everything had changed, that there was no more room for games, no more back and forth. I didn't care about the contents of the envelope. I didn't need to know what her reaction would be. What mattered was that she understood this time, finally, that I was done. Her voice trembled when she called out to me again, but it wasn't the same. There was no fire in it now, no fight. It was small, broken. "You can't just do this," she said, more to herself than to me. "This isn't over. You can't—" But I didn't turn around. I didn't need to hear her plea. She had lost, she had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. All of her manipulations, all her calculated moves had led her to this moment. Alone. I kept walking, the sound of my footsteps steady against the quiet of the courthouse. The city felt distant, like the whole world was on mute as I made my way down the street. Behind me, there was only silence. I knew she'd realized it by now, what she'd lost, what she'd done to herself. She couldn't fix it anymore. There was no coming back. And when I reached the corner, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. She had everything she thought she wanted, but now she had nothing. Nothing left to control, nothing left to manipulate. It was over. I walked away from the courthouse without looking back. It wasn't anger that drove me, not a burst of emotion. It was just relief. Relief that it was finally over. I'd done what I needed to do. Lisa's world was in pieces now, and I wasn't about to play the part of the villain. She'd made her own mess. I just gave it a little push. I didn't feel vindicated, not exactly, more like I had followed through on something I'd set in motion a long time ago. The outcome had been calculated, every move, every step, every detail accounted for. There had been no room for mistakes, no room for second guessing. It had all led here, her last desperate attempt to salvage some piece of her image, some shred of control. That was over now, too. She didn't have the leverage she thought she did. No more manipulation, no more games. Just the cold, hard reality of the consequences she'd been avoiding. I reached the street corner and paused for a moment, watching the cars pass by. The cold air bit at my skin, and for a second, I didn't feel anything. Not satisfaction, not even the lingering weight of the decision, just the finality of it. I didn't need to say anything to Lisa. I never had. She had done all the talking for me. She had tried to play the victim, to twist the narrative, but now she was left with nothing. No one left to blame, no one left to manipulate. The only thing she had now was the wreckage of her own choices. I shoved my hands into my coat pockets and started walking down the street. The sky was overcast, and the city felt distant, like the whole world was moving in slow motion. I wasn't going to look back. I had no reason to. Lisa was done. She had no power left. I had finished what I set out to do, and now there was nothing more to say. The chill in the air settled deep into my bones, but I didn't mind. It felt fitting, quiet, cold, like everything else that had led up to this moment. And as I walked, I knew this was it, the end of the story. My story with Lisa was finished. The silence was all I needed. It was over.